Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Sunshine edition of the DC Scrum User Group. My name is Fadi Stefan. I'm with Kaizen Co, and I'll be your host for today. At the DC Scrum User Group, as always, we're here to connect, share, and learn about all things Agile and Scrum. I just have one announcement for you today, and we'll get started. In February, we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of the signing of the Agile Manifesto. Throughout the entire month, as part of the Agile 20 Reflect Festival, community volunteers and organizers are going to be running free Agile events celebrating this milestone. Please follow Kaizen Co on LinkedIn or Twitter to find out more, as we here in DC are kicking things off with a talk on February 1st on a look behind the scenes of the writing of the manifesto. We're going to take a look at the state of software development back in 2001, what drove the authors to write the Agile Manifesto, and how they came about to do that, and most importantly, reflecting back 20 years later, what might they have changed or done differently. So please join us for that event, along with many other awesome events happening throughout the entire month of February. All right, let's move on to today's talk. And I am happy to have Richard Cheng, my friend and colleague, joining us today. Richard is now VP of Training at Next Step Solutions. They are leading transformative training solutions, both in Agile, Scrum, and Kanban. Richard is a renowned expert. He's an Agile expert that has published publications on product management and has presented worldwide. He's a Virginia Tech graduate and member of Mensa, and has extensive experience in the federal government, large organizations, as well as associations. Richard, I'm so glad you were able to join us today, and I'm going to pass it on to you.
Great. Thank you, Fadi, and thanks for having me join the group. It's been a while since I worked with DC Scrum User Group, and it's great seeing all the folks here. I'm going to share my screen. Give me one moment while I bring up my PowerPoint. Okay, I think everyone can see my PowerPoint now. So let's jump into it. So for this session, we're going to talk about the Scrum Master role. Quick overview of what we're going to talk about today. We'll do a quick review of the Scrum roles to get us started. 5 things to look for in a Scrum Master. How to improve as a Scrum Master. We'll answer a series of questions about the Scrum Master role. How we can tell if the Scrum Master is doing a good job. And I'll end the session with the Scrum Master progression for solving problems and some Q&A as well. Now, with that said, let me first introduce myself really quick. Actually, Fadi already introduced me, so I just want to share with you my contact information. I'm going to copy and paste this in the chat window so everyone has it. So we take this, copy and paste this into the chat window. In your chat window, you should have all this information now. So feel free to join me on LinkedIn. Feel free to follow our organization at LinkedIn. Feel free to follow me on Twitter. And a soft copy of these slides are available on my SlideShare account as well. All right, let's start by first talking about the Scrum team. So this is a primer, a refresher. Many of you know this already, but for those that don't, we'll go over this very quickly. So if you picture this circle as the entire Scrum team, this kind of dotted wing shape in the middle here is the Scrum development team. 3 to 9 folks is the recommendation. The dev team is a mix of different types of folks. So in your dev team, you might have developer types, tester types, analyst types. From a Scrum standpoint, we don't even view those as roles. We view those as capabilities. For example, what Scrum views it as is you're a dev team member with a background in UI UX design. You're a dev team member with experience in testing. You're a dev team member with strong expertise in front-end web design or back-end coding. But we're all dev team members working together to develop a solution. That's a dev team, 3 to 9. On top of that, we have the product owner, right? They're the ones that ensure that our product vision, our roadmap, and our release plans are aligned, as well as the Scrum Master. They're the ones that ensure that we're constantly getting better and improving as a team. Oh, by the way, I see a question here, why there's no design role shown. You can have design. In fact, you could have design, architects, database folks, security, legal. What you need is all the skill sets on the team to get the job done. What I have here that says developer, tester, analyst, those are examples. In fact, I have testers on here. You don't have to have testers on the team. When I was at the NASDAQ stock market, when I was at Motley Fool, we didn't have testers on the team. What that meant was we all did our own testing. We viewed testing less of a role and more as a function. So yeah, you can have designers on the team if you're doing a lot of work that needs design. I think that's fantastic. So that's the Scrum team. Quick note, Dev team does not include product owner nor Scrum Master. Scrum team does. Right. Now, outside of that, you may have other folks like legal, security, networking, subject matter experts, database administrators, release management. There might be folks that are in the organization that aren't on the Scrum team, which is fine. They're just people we interact with or interact with us. My recommendation is that if we need your skill sets on our team day to day, they should be part of the Scrum team. But if we don't need them day to day, they can be other folks we just interface with. Right? So that's a bit of a primer on the Scrum roles. And in today's session, we're going to talk about the Scrum Master role. Right? Now, a couple quick notes here. I see there's some questions in the a chat window. I'm not going to be monitoring the chat window real time. If you have a real-time question you want me to answer, feel free to raise your hand. What I will do, Fadi, if you can monitor the questions, if you see any very pertinent questions you want to bring up, Fadi, just let me know real time. And what I'll also do periodically is I'll stop and ask for questions as well. So let's talk about the Scrum Master role here. And what we're going to talk about first are the 5 things to look for in a Scrum Master. This isn't from the Scrum Guide. This is something I've found over time, but I've found this to work really well. In fact, what I've done is I've created a Scrum Master persona template for you to kind of help identify how effective your Scrum Master is potentially, or how well aligned your Scrum Master potentially is to be a Scrum Master. So what you do in this template is you put their picture up here, their name, some relevant notes about them, as well as ranking them through these 5 dimensions. Dimensions are knowledge, which is their understanding of Agile and Scrum. Experience, having the experience working with Scrum teams in the past. Coaching, have them understanding how to be an effective coach. Facilitation, them having great facilitation skills. And servant leadership, which is a great sense in helping the teams achieve the success. So these are what we rate our Scrum Masters on. In my example, I'm going to use a 1 through 5 rating. You can use whatever you want. You can use 1 through 5, A through F, 0 through 10, whatever you like. Now, here's the example. We have Sarah, the new Scrum Master. Sarah's been with the organization for 5 years, largely as an analyst. 2 years ago, she joined the Portal. Joined the Portal Scrum team as a dev team member. He's read several books on Scrum and gone to some of the user group meetings, and recently became a certified Scrum Master. So that's Sarah's background. Here's what I want all of you to do. I want all of you to read about Sarah, read the rankings we have here. And as you're reading this, I want you to think to yourself, would Sarah potentially be a good Scrum Master? Would Sarah potentially be a good fit for the Scrum Master roles? Think about that as you read these rankings. Take about a minute or 2 to read these rankings to yourself. All right, so as you read this, what I want you to do next is in your Zoom controls, you should have a control that says, where is that? There should be one that says reactions. You guys see the reactions control? Is that available, Fadi?
Yes, it should be.
Okay, what I want you to do is in your reactions, you should see buttons that say yes, no, maybe, go slower, go faster. What I want you to do is if you think Sarah would potentially be a good Scrum Master, give me a yes. If you think she would not potentially be a good Scrum Master, give me a no. And if you think she's a maybe, give me a go slower. You could also type it in the chat window as well. So give me your answer. Do you think Sarah would potentially be a good Scrum Master? Give me a yes if you think she's potentially a good fit for the Scrum Master. Give me a no if you think she is not. Give me a maybe if you think she's maybe. You can type in a chat window or use reactions, although I don't see the reaction. It's interesting.
I don't know if it's just me, but I only have clap and thumbs up.
Okay, yeah, just yeah, I'm not sure why that is either, but go ahead and just type it in the chat window. And you can type in maybe in the chat window. Okay, so it looks like there's a mix, right? It looks like there's a mix. It looks like a lot of people are saying yes. Some people are saying maybe. I don't see any no's per se. Okay, good. So I think a lot of you are seeing kind of what we're seeing, right? She may be a potentially a good Scrum Master, but what are the problems? What's one of the biggest issues? Open question group, you can say the answer out loud. What's one of the biggest issues we have with Sarah?
Experience.
Yeah, the experience is certainly a big one, right? Experience, right? She has never been a Scrum Master before, right? That's a good one, yeah. What's another issue? Yeah, the coach.
Self-taught.
Yeah, the self-taught, right? The coaching, facilitation, or self-taught. If you look through our rankings of Sarah, right, for the knowledge, she's pretty good there. She's not an expert, but she's read a lot, soaked in a lot of information, and got a perfect score on her CSM exam. Probably took it through me, wink, wink. So she's great there. Experience, this is a bit of an issue. Now, on the plus side, she has been on Scrum teams before, which is great. And she's worked with Scrum Masters before, which is great, but she's never actually been a Scrum Master. So we're going to rank her a bit lower on the experience side. The coaching, similar deal. Sarah has very good communication and collaboration abilities, which is great because that's very key as a Scrum Master, but she doesn't have any formal coaching experience or training. We'll rank her a bit lower there. With facilitation, we're going to rank her a little bit higher there because she actually has facilitated quite a bit in the past with requirements gathering sessions, brainstorming sessions, but she's never had any formal facilitation skills, and her facilitation skills are still emerging. We'll give her a 3 there. For servant leadership, we score her higher here. She has a great ability to get along people. She's shown a strong focus on creating an environment where success happens not because of her, but success happens around her. And her mindset is she's happy to enable the successes of those around her. So we'll give her a 4 for servant leadership. So I would agree with, I think, what everyone's saying here is that while she's not perfect, we think that there probably is a lot in place where she is good as a potential new and green Scrum Master. Right. Now, I like some of the notes I see in the chat window is, okay, she probably needs a mentor or a coach, or she needs some more development, right? Which I think is a good point. So then the question is, okay, if we have this new Scrum Master, how do we get them better? So here's how we get them better. What do we do if we don't have a perfect Scrum Master? So a couple quick thoughts. One is training. So there's a series of courses I think are really nice. The Certified Scrum Master class, the Advanced Csm course, the Agile Coaching, Agile Facilitation, and the Certified Scrum, the CSP SM, Certified Scrum. I always get this confused. I always forget it. Professional in Scrum Mastery. So those are all great courses to take. In fact, what I recommend is what I have up here is kind of the order I recommend it, kind of. Start with the CSM. The CSM is your Agile and Scrum 101 and Basics class. It's a great class for everyone, not just Scrum Masters, but it's a great class for everyone to get a really good understanding of Agile and Scrum concepts. Start with that first, right? And then from there, these next 3, the Advanced CSM, the Agile Coaching, and Agile Facilitation, you can do those in whatever order you wish. The Advanced CSM gives you more advanced concepts in Scrum Mastery and being a Scrum Master. It gives you more techniques, and it allows you to work with other folks in the class to share your experiences and help each other learn and grow. The coaching and facilitation classes are just that, classes that focus on coaching techniques and facilitation techniques. I see Agile organization has a couple certified courses in coaching and facilitation that I think are rather very effective, right? And the CSPSM is great if you are a It's great if you have a few years experience. Do not take that class if you don't have the experience. It'd be like taking Russian 4, having never taken Russian before. You'd spend the entire time just lost and confused. The CSPSM is a true practitioner level course. Take that after you have some experience. The class will use your experience to kind of talk through scenarios and then draw from that. So training is great. These are some classes. There's other classes you can take too. These are some example of types of classes you can take. Next is mentoring. So mentoring is having a skilled Scrum Master or an Agile coach work with you, the Scrum Master, to help you grow your skills. I think that's great. There's also pairing. Some people will ask me, Rich, what's the difference between pairing and mentoring? The core difference is in a mentoring relationship, what you have is a junior person and a more senior person or a more skilled person. And the skilled person is helping the less skilled person evolve and grow. In a pairing scenario, what you have are two folks that are relatively at the same point in place in terms of their abilities. And what they're doing is helping each other learn and grow. So that's pairing. So in a pairing model, what you have is two Scrum Masters that may go to each other's retrospectives or daily scrums, and afterwards they'll compare notes. What did you see? Here's what I saw. Right. So that's mentoring and pairing. That's awesome. Another great thing is going to conferences. Right now, there's a lot of great virtual conferences going on. And the great thing about the virtual conferences is, one, there's no more the expense, the cost of traveling to the location. You can do it from home. And the other great thing is that the virtual conferences generally are free or very low cost compared to the in-person conferences. So that's great. For those in a DC area, the Agile DC Conference is still probably going to happen this year, I think. That's the latest word I've heard. It'll be virtual. And like Fadi said, there's a bunch of stuff going on in the upcoming months to celebrate the Agile 20th anniversary. Right. Now, on top of that, there's some great books to read. There's many good books out there. I point out 3. There's Coaching Agile Teams by Lisa Atkins. Excellent book. I recommend all Scrum Masters read that. And the great thing is, Lisa has just released about a month or 2 ago the audiobook version. Actually, is that true? I know she just recorded it. I think it's released now.
It's out, yeah.
Yeah, is it out now? Awesome. So Lisa's audiobook is now out, which is great. And the great thing about that is she recorded it herself. So you actually get to hear Lisa's voice in the audiobook. Essential Scrum by Ken Rubens is very good. Agile Retrospectives by Diane Larson, Esther Derby, also very good. There are a ton of books out there. These are 3 good ones to start with. Oh, the other thing I should add on there too is The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim. It's probably one of the best and most fun books I've read on kind of the IT world because it's written as a fictional novel. Very good book as well. Websites, there's a slew of websites, a ton of great websites to go to. 2 that are very good to start off with is one, just the Scrum Alliance website. From there, they have their own blogs as well as their links to other websites. A friend of mine, Michael James, is a trainer in the West Coast, has a great website called the ScrumMasterChecklist.org. We'll talk more about that site later in this session. From there, going to user groups. The DC Scrum user group is an awesome user group. Fadi is doing a great job keeping it going, even in the virtual world. Thanks and kudos to Fadi for that, and for the rest of the DC Scrum user group team members as well. And then communities of practice. So if you work in an organization where you have multiple Scrum Masters, having an internal community of practice is great. When I was at the Motley Fool, you guys familiar with the Motley Fool? Fool.com is the website. Do I have any Motley Fool people here? If I do, welcome. When I was there, which was probably about 10 years ago, it was probably one of the best Agile shop I've ever worked at. But I was part of the Scrum Master community of practice there. One of my clients is Progressive Insurance. They have, interestingly enough, they have an Agile community of practice and a Scrum Master community of practice, which is great. And I just recently gave a talk at the John Deere Agile community of practice as well. So the community of practices, what they do there is they bring in speakers to give talks. They will do lunch and learns. And what we did at the Motley Fool is we maintained standards and helped all the teams kind of grow and learn and share. For example, at the Motley Fool, we had a a Scrum norms, which are Scrum practices we wanted all teams to do, and Scrum pilots, which are deviations from the norms that any team's allowed to do. And as community practice, we periodically reviewed all the pilots, and some pilots we elevated to new norms, some pilots we kept as pilots, and some pilots were detrimental toward trying to achieve. And so we asked those teams to stop using those pilots. So these are some ways that you can get better as a Scrum Master. Fadi, any questions we should call out at this point?
Keep going, Richard. They asked for links for the books. I'm going to provide them for everybody. But
Great. And I see a hand raised as well. Hajar, is that the name? You had a question?
Yeah, it's Hadger, like Wisconsin Badger.
Okay, Hadger.
I saw a question in the chat, and I also had a similar question when you were talking about training as part of the number 1 point knowledge area. So what about safe or scaled agile framework trainings and certifications? How does that?
So I would consider that if our organization is doing safe. I would not consider that if our organization is not doing safe. That's the short answer. Is there a follow-up question to that, or does that help?
No, that's it.
Yeah, there's a lot of scaling frameworks out there, and honestly, they have all the pros and cons, but I'll save that for a separate talk. Oh, here's a quick note. A good Scrum Master is always on the verge of being fired. Why do you think that is? Question to the group. Why do you think that is? Oh, this is a quote from Ken Schwaber, one of the founders of Scrum. Why do you think that is? Redundancy? Well, let me put it to you this way. Bonus question. Anyone know the 3 core pillars of Scrum? Oh, Mindy, good answer. Sounds like you had good training, Mindy. Yeah, well, first of all, the 3 pillars of Scrum are transparency, inspection, adaptation. As a Scrum Master, what we're trying to do is create an environment of radical transparency so that we have great insights into the system. Once we have great insights, we can inspect in the system so we can make the changes we need to make, right? One of the reasons why a good Scrum Master is always on the verge of being fired is that individuals, teams, and organizations tend to gravitate towards a status quo. Change can be very tough for individuals, teams, and organizations. And as a Scrum Master, you're kind of the point. You're the one that have to have these difficult conversations when our organizational alignment, when our organizational issues become our impediments. We have to be the point of that conversation. And oftentimes that can be very tricky. Speaking, for example, truth to leadership can be a very delicate topic, which is why these 5 points here, the knowledge, experience, coaching, facilitation, and servant leadership becomes so critical in helping us effectively have those conversations. Now, what I'm going to do next is I have 5 questions I'm going to pose to the group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you guys talk about this in breakout rooms. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy and paste these 5 questions into the chat window. So all of you should have this in the chat window, these 5 questions. Right. And what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. So let me do that. Give me one moment, please. I'm going to create the breakout rooms. Let's see here. How many of us do we have? We have all right, good. I'm going to create the breakout rooms so that there's about 6 participants in each room. And I'm going to go ahead and create the rooms. I'll give you wait a second. I'm going to give you about 6 minutes in the rooms. Give me 1 second here while I set this up. All right. Any questions before I put you in the breakout rooms? In the breakout rooms, I'll give you 6 minutes in the rooms. I'm opening up the rooms now. Please answer those questions, talk about those questions, and see if you can come to agreement in your breakout rooms. Opening up the rooms now. Go ahead and join your breakout rooms. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. My fault. I have to do that right now. Give me a second. They changed the interface a little bit since last time I saw this. So here we go. I'm opening up the rooms now, and you don't. It's yeah.
Will people have access to the questions?
Yeah, the chat should persist through the rooms. If you have any problems running the rooms, go ahead and come back to the lobby to grab me, or you can raise your hand in the rooms, and I'll see it. I'm opening up the rooms now. All right, welcome back, everyone. So I think everyone had a chance to chat about this. Let's talk about the first two first. Right. Is a Scrum Master a full-time position? Should I be a Scrum Master across multiple teams? In the chat window, type in what your group answer was. So you can type in like yes, yes, for example, if you think that both could be true. No, no, if you think both are false. Maybe, maybe, if you think it's maybe, maybe. Type in the answer that you guys come up with in your rooms. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, maybe. Yes, 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 maybe, yes, no, yes, maybe. I like the depends. Depends is always a safe answer. That's what we call the consultant answer. I love the depends answer. Okay, it looks like there's some variations. Now, it does look like a lot of folks are saying yes for the first one. And the second one seems to vary a bit. Yeah. Now, let's talk about this. So here's what I would say is, to really answer this question, we probably first have to understand what a Scrum Master really does day to day, right? Once we understand what a Scrum Master does day to day, I think it's really going to help us answer this question. So let's talk about that. And probably the best thing I've seen in terms of helping us understand what a Scrum Master does day to day is back to Michael James, who's a trainer out in the West Coast. His website, ScrumMasterChecklist.org, I think does a very good job in calling this out. What Michael does on his website is he breaks the Scrum Master role down into 4 key dimensions. Number one is, how is the product owner doing? Right. This is from the Scrum Master Checklist website. I'm not going to go over these one by one, but Scrum Masters generally aren't great at Scrum day one, right? And so what happens then is that if Scrum Masters aren't great at Scrum day one, it's up to the product owner to help the Scrum Master work through that. What I've seen in the past is Scrum Masters will come in and they'll say, some product owners will come in and they'll say stuff like, hey, this is all high priority, so get it all done, right? A lot of product owners have no idea how to write true vertical slices in user stories. A lot of product owners will have no idea how to work in a Scrum environment. They won't know how to properly manage a product backlog. A lot of product owners will kind of sit in the room by themselves and make things up without talking to their stakeholders. A lot of product owners are too focused on stakeholders, don't have enough time for the dev team. And so it's up to the Scrum Master to really coach the product owner to understand how to be an effective product owner with the Scrum team in an Agile environment. This is a lot of work. Every place where I've ever been as a Scrum Master, I still have great relationships with the product owners. In fact, I was just texting with my Smotley Fool product owners last week, a week or two ago. I haven't been there in over 10 years, and we're still super close, right? Because what happens is, as a product owner, you spend a lot of time getting your Scrum Masters up to speed. That just takes a lot of work. So that's number one, is how the product owner is doing. Then we also have the dev team. How's the dev team doing? I'm not going to go over these one by one, but I've been on dev teams where I go in and developers will say stuff like, hey, we're doing Scrum now, so we're not writing documentation anymore. We're doing Scrum now, so we're not giving estimates anymore. We're doing Scrum now, so we're not following due dates anymore. Well, that's not what Scrum really means, right? Now, I've also seen it the other way, where I've had gone in and developers have said stuff like, hey, how about you just give me all the requirements, no one talks to me for 3 months, I give you the product, right? Well, what do we do about that? I have some development teams, well, let's say, all right, let's self-organize. And by self-organizing, let's do this. Let's have it so that you analysts only do analysis, front-end person only do front-end, testers, you only test, I only do the back end. And if we play this right, we never have to talk to each other throughout the entire sprint. Well, what do we do about that, right? I've had some dev team members, hopefully this isn't the case with you, but I've had some dev team members that have been hiding in the shadows the whole time. Once you start doing Scrum, there's no more shadows to hide into, right? And once we realize there's no more shadows to hide into, right, that's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of team members. How do we deal with that, right? So what happens here is that as what you'll see as a Scrum Master is some teams will understand the concepts really well. Some teams will need a lot of help. Some individuals will align really well to these concepts, some not so much. Working with the dev team is going to be time consuming, right? Now, there's also the organization, right? What happens is doing Scrum at the team level, we can have success at the team level up to an extent, but eventually if the organization isn't aligned, we're going to start running into problems, right? I've been in environments where our team's doing Scrum, the other team's doing Waterfall. We need to integrate now. They won't be ready to integrate for 4 months. What do we do about that, right? I've had leadership say stuff like, hey, we need you to do Scrum, but make sure that you get all the requirements right. Initially, we're going to lock them down, and once we lock them down, we're not changing it. Right? Well, what do we do about that? Right? I've had some teams where we have Scrum teams where I have team members spread across 3 or 4 different Scrum teams. What do we do about that? Right? One of my first government clients doing Agile was OPM. You guys familiar with OPM? Office of Personnel Management. By the way, their USA Jobs and USA Staffing teams, while not perfect, they're doing Scrum, and where they are now versus 10 years ago, there's a palpable difference. But with that said, when I started doing Scrum there, I met with one of their senior executives. Oh, someone coaches OPM. That's awesome. When I met with one of their senior executives, I sat down and walked them through what Agile meant, what Scrum really meant. The executive said this. The executive said, this is awesome. This is exactly what we need here. We need you to help us do this. And when you do this, you have to make sure that all my requirements teams are doing Scrum, so that all my design teams can do Scrum, so that all my development teams can do Scrum, so that all my testing teams can do Scrum. So I just kind of shook my head and said, let's go back to slide number 2, because from a Scrum standpoint, those aren't separate teams. We want to roll all those capabilities into the same team, right? And so that was a big culture change for that executive. And it actually, like, when I say this out loud, it seems like it's straightforward, but the thing with that executive is they had to go through decades of the way they're used to doing it just to rethink that. This takes a lot of time, right? So all of this is very time consuming. Now, this last note, engineering practices, you don't have to be a former developer to be an effective Scrum Master, but if you're working with Scrum teams, you have to do your homework to understand these concepts. Because when developers come up to me and say, hey, we need more time for testing, or we need more testers, right? What they're often saying is we don't have a lot of automation in place, right? When developers say, hey, we don't have time to do test automation, what they're really saying is we as a team don't have great experience or knowledge in test automation. Because anyone that's ever been in an environment with great test automation, what we realize is any time spent up front developing the automated test pays for itself on the back end when we run the test, right? Some of the biggest debates I've had have been with enterprise architect types. They'll say stuff like, but Rich, we need to spend 3 months architecting the perfect system so we don't box ourselves in a corner. What I tell them is, look, the way you end up boxing yourself in a corner is by spending 3 months thinking you have a perfect architecture. Because when you do that, you don't tend to want to evolve and emerge architecture. You try to use that same architecture throughout. And what you end up doing is using the equivalent of digital duct tape and bubble gum to like make your square pegs fit in these round holes instead of evolving the architecture, right? What you want to do is create just enough for now with an eye towards tomorrow, right? This takes a lot of time. So all this together, here's what I would say. Is a Scrum Master a full-time position? Yes. Should I be a Scrum Master across multiple teams? My answer is no, right? That's the short answer. Now, there is a longer answer, right? The longer answer is this. If you have a highly skilled Scrum Master along with very mature Agile teams, along with an organization that's very well aligned with Agile concepts, then you have more permutations to play with for those first 2. But if any of those aren't true, I would keep it more one-to-one. Meaning, let's say that my Scrum Master is very green, but the team is very well aligned with Agile concepts and organization gets it. Well, if my Scrum Master is very green, obviously don't split them across multiple teams. They're a very green Scrum Master. Let them absorb the learning curve on one team, right? Now, let's say the Scrum Master is really good, but the team needs a lot of help, right? Learning Scrum, and the organization is really well aligned. Well, what's going to happen is Scrum Master is going to spend a lot of time with that one team, getting them to a good point, keep that one-to-one, right? Now, let's say the Scrum Master is really good, the team's really good in terms of Agile and Scrum, but the organization needs a lot of work. Then as a Scrum Master, I'm so busy trying to get the organizational parts better aligned that I'm not going to have time to work with multiple teams. Right? That's the short answer and longer answer to the first set of questions. Right. Now let's go to the next set of questions. Should I be a Scrum Master and product owner? Should I be a Scrum Master and dev team member? Can a good project manager become a good Scrum Master? Type in your answers in the chat window. No, no, yes. No, no, sure. I like that confidence in the last one, Ari. No, no, yes. No, no, yes. No, no, I am. I like that answer too. Yeah. So here's what I would say. For the first one, should I be a Scrum Master and product owner? This is actually considered one of the biggest sins in Scrum, is don't do this. One reason is this picture right here. As a product owner, you're trying to build the right thing. As a dev team, you're trying to build it right, and there's kind of a natural tension there. And what you want is you want that to be a healthy tension, right? And if the Scrum Master gets too into either one of these camps, the danger is that the tension becomes an unhealthy tension and you have conflict instead of collaboration, right? So that Scrum Master is there to kind of balance that tension. The other thing is this. Look, I have a person that does my yard. I have a person that does my teeth. Guess what they are? They're two different people. You know why? Because if they were the same person, I would fundamentally question two things. I would question that person's decision-making capabilities. I'm sorry, I would question that person's life choices and my decision-making, right? Why is my dentist and my landscaper two different people? Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Because pulling teeth is a lot different than pulling plants.
Yes, yes. Now, at one point, it's you just go in and yank, right? No, you don't just go in and yank. It's if my dentist ever says to me, hey, look, I'm just going to go in and yank, I'm looking for a new dentist, right? It's two different skill sets, two different perspectives, two different things, right? As a product owner, the expectation is you know your product really well. You have a deep understanding of your product. That's your skill set. That's your expertise. As a Scrum Master, my skill set expertise is Agile and Scrum concepts. You guys know who Johnny IV is? Johnny IV is the longtime Apple iPhone product manager. He left Apple, I think about a year or two ago, right? Now, that means that job is open. Definitely apply for that job because that job pays multi-million dollars a year, I assume. However, it's highly unlikely you're going to get it. Why would you not get that job? Let me rephrase it. Who's going to be the Apple iPhone? What type of person is going to be the next Apple iPhone product manager? The answer is this. It's me someone, if they're probably going to either transfer someone internally or they're going to steal someone from Google Phone or from Samsung. It's going to be one of the world's leading experts in the smartphone market. In their spare time, they're going to be reading about the smartphone. They're going to be going to smartphone conferences. They're going to be reading about smartphone trade journals. They're going to know the competitive landscape, who all the players are, what everyone has in mind for the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the line. They're going to be one of the world's leading experts in the smartphone market. That's your iPhone product manager. If you're a Scrum Master, what should you be really good at? Give you a hint, the answer lies in the title. The answer lies in the title, right? Your expertise will be Agile and Scrum. You're going to know the Agile principles really well. You're going to know the Scrum framework really well. You're going to understand DevOps concepts, continuous integration, understand coaching, facilitation, servant leadership. It's two different perspectives. Yeah. Oh, by the way, if you're not a smartphone expert, you will not become the Apple iPhone smartphone. You will not become the Apple iPhone product owner. That's just simply the way it's going to work. The expectation as a product owner is you're maximizing the value of the product. Now, the next statement, should I be a Scrum Master and Dev team member? I would say it's very tricky. Once again, back to this picture here, right? I was that years ago for a small startup. It was tough because we never did retrospectives. We never did daily scrums because I was too busy getting my code to work. It was very challenging, right? Can a good project manager become a good Scrum Master? I think I saw someone type in the answer from above. I think it was like Mason or Macon. Someone typed in the answer, and the answer here is maybe if they align really well across these 5 dimensions, right? And one of the biggest ones that they have to look at is that servant leadership one, right? So it depends on how you treat the Scrum Master job, right? Or how you treat the project manager job. Meaning, if you're a project manager where you feel like it's my way or the highway, where you follow my lead, you do what I say, and success happens. If you're the type of project manager where you feel like by force of will alone, you can make success happen, your transition to be a Scrum Master will be much more challenging because you'd have to relearn a lot of stuff. It would just be more challenging. Now, on the other hand, if you're a project manager where your approach to project management is you create success around you, where your approach to project management is I create an environment where everyone can succeed, where what I do day to day is I walk around and I say to people, hey, what can I do today to help you and your team succeed? If that's your approach to project management, you are much better aligned with servant leadership. You have a much clearer path to be a Scrum Master. Right? So the answers to these next set is this. First one is no. This first one is no with 2 exclamations. It is considered one of the cardinal sins in Scrum. Right? Next one is no, but without the exclamation marks. Third one is maybe, and it goes back, that's servant leadership, because one of the biggest things that I see in Scrum Masters is do they align really well with helping the team mature and grow. Now, with that said, if you want to do variations of it, you're free to do variations of it, right? Scrum Master is dev team member, product owner is dev team member, some combination thereof, right? Product owner and Scrum Master being the same person, but all these variations tend to make you slower and increase risk. So if you want to create a system that's slower and riskier, well, that's what you would have. If you want to take that friction out of your system, I would recommend against doing that. Right? Now, so then the question is, how do I know if my Scrum Master is doing a good job? Here are the 3 questions I check to see if my Scrum Master is doing a good job. Number 1, are we as a team making the same mistake time and time again, right? Or do we make a mistake a time or two, and then we kind of learn and grow from that? Are we encountering the same issues time and time again? Or do we see issues arise and put practices and policies in place to address the issue going forward? Right? Now, some people will ask me, what's the difference between a mistake and an issue? The simple answer is a mistake is that our team done something that had an unintended consequence or effect that we did not mean. We consider that a mistake. An issue is something has arisen that our team didn't directly cause, but we have to deal with it. I categorize that as an issue. That's the subtle difference, right? The third one here is our team getting better over time, or are we stuck where we are? If you can see that our team isn't making the same mistake time and time again, that we're not encountering the same type of issues time and time again, and that when we make our mistakes or have our issues, that we're getting better and addressing them as we go, that's awesome. And whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But if any of these 3 aren't true, then I would revisit how we approach that Scrum Master role. Right? Finally, I'm going to end with the Scrum Master progression for solving problems. These 7 steps right here. Right? So let's say that I'm an executive, I'm talking to a Scrum Master, and let's say that Scrum team has had an issue that's arisen for a while. Let's say that Scrum team over the last series of releases has a defect rate that is way higher than the rest of the rest of the teams in organization. So I would say, hey, Scrum Master, your teams talk about this in retrospective, right? If you did you discuss the impact, right? Because if it's highly impactful, fix it now. If it's not impactful, you can wait on it. Did you identify the root cause, right? Did you come up with an initial solution? Have you tried the initial solution? What were the initial results? What are next steps from here? What you'll find is the following. Scrum Masters that as a good Scrum Master, I should have really good speaking points to all 7 of these, because that's how I work with my team to work through our problems, right? But if you have a Scrum Master that's going to fumble and bumble their way through these 7 questions, it just means they're greener and need more experience, and that's where we go back to, getting them better as a Scrum Master. By the way, these steps here, the first 4 you come up with in the initial retrospective where you talk about the issue. These next 3 come up in the subsequent retrospectives where you identify if those solutions have impacted your initial issues. With that said, I'm right about up to my time. So what I'm going to do now is, real quick, I want to thank my company for allowing me to take time off my busy day to give a talk. So please come to one of our training courses. Go to Next Up Solutions for more details. And once again, here is my contact information. I'm going to copy and paste this into the chat window so everyone has it once again. With that said, with any time remaining, I'll happy to entertain questions and open it up to the floor. Fadi, any questions we want to go over that you noticed?
Nothing that pops up, Richard.
Okay, I'll open up to the group then. Anyone have a question they want me to answer? Oh, Claudia, I see your question here. If you look at that, what I just sent, this last link to the slides is a SlideShare account, so you can get the slides via my slideshare.net account. So you have a soft copy of all the materials. Dr. Dubose, you had a question?
Hey, yeah, I do have a question. The last question that you had in your list, can a PM be a Scrum Master? I forget, I believe was the language. And the answer was a strong maybe. And I believe a few people said sure. Coming from a PMP background, I'm just now learning some things about Scrum. And I'm not saying a real reason that there should be a disconnect, but I'm curious, can you give more perspective on the maybe?
So if you're familiar, I don't know if you're familiar with Taylorism, there's like theory X and theory Y. Theory X is where like I have to, actually I get the two confused, but I think theory X is where, look, I don't trust people, I have to drive them really hard, keep an eye over them, and that's how success happens. Theory Y is, look, people are inherently motivated and very good. I just need to create a success for success to happen. Where we've seen project managers struggle to become a Scrum Master is if they're in an environment where they're used to project management being they're the boss, they're in charge, everyone reports to them, they tell people what to do and people do it. If that's your approach to project management, that is not at all what a Scrum Master does at all. And their transition to Scrum Mastery would be very challenging. As a Scrum Master, I'm nobody's boss. In fact, I strongly recommend that from an organizational reporting standpoint, as a Scrum Master, no one on the team reports to me organizationally because it creates some dynamics that have some side effects that aren't conducive to my team's ability to perform, right? So as a Scrum Master, I'm more of a servant leader where the way I help you is by creating an environment where you can succeed. Some project managers understand that and gravitate really well towards it. They'll do great. Some project managers are blown away by that concept. They're going to struggle a bit more with it.
I understand. That makes perfect sense. And I'm actually definitely much more of the informal power, no direct report type of project manager. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah,
that's
and
for me.
Yeah,
Richard?
That's awesome, Dr. DeBose. And think of it less of chaos and think of it more of like controlled chaos, which is more the teams have the environment to succeed. By the way, I'm at 1 o'clock, so if anyone needs to drop off, feel free to do so.
Richard, I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna leave the line open because it seems people have some questions, but I just want to make 2 quick announcements for the people that want to drop off. First off, the recording and the slides for all of our DC Scrum presentations are available on kaizenco.com. I'll post that probably in the next couple of days. And remember, our next event is February 1st. We are kicking off the Agile 20 Reflect Festival, celebrating 20 years since the signing of the Agile Manifesto. We're kicking off things at the DC Scrum User Group with an event on February 1st, but there will be many, many events happening throughout the month. I hope you all can join us. Again, if you follow Kaizenco, you'll find out more information on that. With that, I'm going to switch it back to Richard. And if any of you have questions, we'll keep the event open so that we can have Richard answer your questions.
Yeah, and let me also, once again, put my contact information in the chat window, just so people have that as well. So in the chat window, you have my contact information, as well as a link to the slides. Other questions?
All right, I do have one additional question.
Go ahead.
I do a lot of work in federal government space, and I'm very surprised to hear that OPM or any government office can effectively operate in this way with all the bureaucracy. Can you speak to that? Yeah,
it's going to be a challenge. Now, on the plus side, there's organizations like 18F, which is part of GSA. There's another organization called USDS, which is part of OMB. USDS stands for US Digital Services. One of the groups I helped found, which is ADAPT, Agile Delivery for Agencies, Programs, and Teams, is a joint task force with government, academia, and agencies, they're there to help support that. But you're right, Dr. DuBose, is that there is a lot of obstacles, but the government is working on it. And so right now, GSA is in the midst of releasing some official guidance to help with agility. OPM, as we speak, they're in the midst of making the Scrum Master an official government position, right? And so you'll start seeing that, hopefully, within the next set of years, which will be awesome. Right.
Really?
And so the government is in the midst of doing this. At this point, 10 years ago, so in 2011, I helped form the ADAPT group. Our initial conferences were, the topics were, should we do Agile? Is Agile right for us? What is Agile? Is Agile appropriate in government space? Those were the topics in the initial conferences we did in 2010, 2011. In today's world, since 2000, I would say 7 or 8-ish, those aren't the topics anymore. No one's asking that. The topics are now DevOps in government, continuous deployment in government. How do we do Agile better? How do we scale, right? No one's asking if we should do Agile in government anymore, right? They're asking stuff is, how do we align our contracts better? How do we set our RFPs and RFQs better to align with Agile concepts? The agencies are now not asking if we should do Agile. They're saying, how can we do it better? So we're definitely seeing it pop up a lot. Yeah. Hadger like Badger, thanks for the mnemonic. You had a question as well.
No problem, Richard. Coming from the government space, I just wanted to add, yeah, there's more. They've definitely advanced over the past 10 years, but I still see, as at least in the executive branch that kind of looks up to OMB, they do what I call Agile, which is waterfall hybrid Agile. So it's kind of a little bit of mix of both. And then as far as OPM, USA Jobs and USA Staffing are non-appropriated federal offices.
Yeah.
They do not get their funding from Congress, so they have a lot more leeway and a lot more money to play with because they get their fee for service. They're a shared services provider. They get their funding from other federal agencies. So that's
that's
why
a good point.
We've been able to advance the budget, and we're always under CR. Continuing resolution is like any project manager's nightmare because you're trying to do a project and you have no money. So that's also another challenge in the government sphere.
Yeah, the government, there are certain nuances like that. What Hajar points out is a good point. The USA Jobs and Staffing kind of fund themselves, right, through their own, because USA Staffing is actually a product that the government buys and sells. And it actually has competitors, like Monster.com has a competitor, and there's others as well. Now, when I was at OPM, I was doing like retirement stuff and some other stuff that wasn't government for, it wasn't self-funded. And so, Hajar, you have a good point, though. There's a lot of issues. I used to tell a joke, except it's not really, well, here's what I used to say, well, I still say it actually, is that the East Coast, from an IT standpoint, the East Coast is about 5 years behind West Coast, about 10 years behind government. And so then my government friends laughed and they said, we're lucky if we're 10 years behind West Coast. But that's actually not a bad place to be, because if the government is legitimately 10 years behind the West Coast, what Netflix was doing 10 years ago was amazing, right? And so if the government is there now, I'd be thrilled, right? And so it just takes a bit more time for all this stuff to catch up, but we're seeing it, right? OPM 10 years ago, there are certain departments that were considered toxic. You could not find people to work in. Now, at least with some of the departments I've worked with, people are happy. USA Jobs and Staffing, so Macon, Georgia is where OPM has their development shop. Washington, D.C. was where our program office is. Macon and D.C. used to be like this, where they couldn't be in the same room together. At the Agile 2018 conference in D.C., we were all socializing, went to happy hours together. It was fun. When we go down to Macon, we'll stay at the Residence Inn Hotel because they have a big barbecue grill area, and we'll all go to the grocery store and buy a bunch of stuff and cook a team meal for everyone in the hotel for dinner. It's just a different culture now. And a lot of that is because the collaboration we had to do with the Agile mindset. Yeah. Other questions? Oh, did I help with the question?
There were some people with their hands raised. I don't know if you
go ahead.
I had a question about the fact that some clients, they insist on documentation, although we follow a SAFe model with 4 Scrum teams. What would your comment be? How do you influence clients to move away from excessive documentation?
Yeah. Hey, I'm glad you asked this because I've been doing something that I feel bad about. I'm finally able to make it right. Fadi, I've stolen something from you that I don't think I've ever told you I stole from you. So I think I first heard Fadi say this, what I'm about to say, but it's brilliant. So I think Fadi's first person I heard say this was this concept: minimal viable bureaucracy, right? So that was yours, right, Fadi?
Yeah, that was at a presentation at the Agile Conference maybe 5-6 years ago when it was in DC.
So I love that you said there, Fadi, and I think is the right answer. So what I do is anytime I write documentation whatsoever, I ask two questions: who's it for? How are they going to use it? And I'll do as little as possible to make that happen, right? Because by definition, anything less is irresponsible, but by definition, anything more is excessive. For example, if I have documentation I need for the auditors, what I would do is I would meet with the auditors to find out what they need. Then I would put together just a little bit less than I know they need. Then I will try to meet with them again, and I'll say, hey, auditors, here's what I have so far. Right? I know it's not everything, but can we work together to fill in the gaps? That way, you don't end up with a bunch of paperwork that you don't want to read through. I don't end up writing a bunch of stuff that you don't need. Right? Minimal viable bureaucracy. I like that concept. Just enough to meet the need. Nothing more, nothing less. My product owner course, I go way deeper into that, and I show you some examples of how we do that from a user requirement standpoint, from a user manual standpoint, from a system supportability standpoint, from an auditing and trail and tracking standpoint, how that works out. Yeah. 4, you had a question as well.
Yes, thank you. This has been great. Nice to meet all you folks. Hope you're safe. Excuse me. This is maybe a topic, not a question, but excuse me, one of my focuses is getting teams to understand that discovery really has to drive everything. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time building stuff that nobody cares about. So how do you coach to support the value of discovery? Discovery can mean a lot of things.
Yeah, so probably the best answer is, number one, come to my advanced CSPO course, but a more practical answer is what we have to find out is we have to really make sure that what we're building is what people need, right? What we're building is valuable, right? Valuable to the users, valuable to the customers and clients, valuable to organization, right? And so as a product owner, that's a big part of my job. And so what we have to identify is who all of our kind of key stakeholders and users and customers are, and what value means to them, and if we're really achieving that value. Those are conversations we have to have early and often, right? And as a Scrum Master, the best you can do is keep reinforcing that with the best you can do for the best you do is send them to my training, but I just say that because come to my training. But as a Scrum Master, what you really want to do is keep reinforcing that message with the product owner, saying, hey, are we constantly validating that what we're building really meets the needs, right? I want to avoid these ivory tower product owners where they're in the room by themselves and they think the organization wants this, they think our customers want this. They need to validate these concepts. That's where I love ideas like design thinking and lean startup. Design thinking and lean startup used to have conflict with the agile world because the agile world wants us to build product right away, right? Whereas design thinking says, no, think about your users first and what their needs are. That's kind of a very design thinking mindset. Lean thinking mindset has it so to say, look, map out your assumptions first, validate your assumptions before you do deeper investments, right? And so in recent years, we've done a really good job as an industry marrying design thinking concepts with lean startup concepts and agile concepts. And now it's no longer so much this, it's more a harmony in using all three together. There's something called, I'll stop there. I was about to go deeper, but I'll stop right there. Yeah.
Can you say just a sentence or two about how you encourage the validation repeatedly?
So there's a concept called riskiest assumption testing, right? RAT testing. And so what you want to do is at the very early parts of your product and in key checkpoints is not only release slices of your product, right? But also create experiments to validate your assumptions. Integrate that throughout. And as a Scrum Master or a coach, just keep reinforcing that with your teams, keep reinforcing that with your product owner, keep reinforcing that with the organization's leadership and management. Just keep bring that message up, and realizing that sometimes it can feel like an uphill battle. Like when I was at OPM in 2000, when was I there? I was there 2010, 11, 12, right around then. At times, I almost wanted to give up, like, because I went from the Motley Fool, which was awesome, to OPM, which is a big gray government building. Initially, it was depressing, like legit depressing. But after a while, I found like other people in the building trying to do the same thing I was doing, and we kind of created a peer group to commiserate and share. And once we could see, like once we started seeing some of the practices take hold, and once we started seeing leaders repeating the same sentence as we were saying, we realized, wait, this is working, right? And once we saw it working, it just gave us kind of, it pumped us up and psyched us up. And to the point where I know Hajar, and I know Dr. Dubose, I know for live in government, it can feel like an uphill battle, but I'll tell you for an unequivocal fact, where we are in 2021 versus where we are in 2010 in the government and Agile, night and day, night and day. It's not perfect. It's not even great yet, but it's way better. That's all we can ask for.
Thanks, appreciate it.
You're welcome. I was with Excel 10 years ago. Yep. Yep. Body and I were both former Excelians. Yep. Any other questions? All right. Well, I apologize for keeping everyone so far past lunch or past the lunch break. But I hope you guys found this helpful. Feel free to reach out to me at any point. If anyone wants to set up a chance to have a private chat, feel free to send me an email and we can go from there. Otherwise, thank you all very much. I enjoyed working with everybody. Thank you.
Awesome. Can you stop sharing, Richard?
Yep.
All right, folks. Thanks a lot for joining us. And thank you, Richard. Awesome job. People stuck around and had awesome questions afterwards. So I'm obviously very interested in the topic. Thanks a lot for doing that. As always, hope to see you at our next event. Remember, it'll be February 1st, where we're going to kick off the Agile 20 Reflect Festival, a full month of Agile events happening throughout the world and in the DC area, all free events. February 1st, DC Scrum User Group is hosting a behind-the-scene look at the writing of the Agile Manifesto back in Snowbird in 2001. So hope to see you all there. Again, the video and the slides will be posted, so stay tuned if you want to kind of review that again next time. Take care, everybody. Later.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great weekend.